Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Project Management PrepCast, the most valuable of your PMP exam preparation tools. I'm your instructor, Cornelius Fichtner. Projects are the driver behind how business is done. If you need to change a business process, then you're going to initiate a project that develops and implements that new process. In other words, we project managers, we are the movers and the shakers of how business is done. But how much do we really have to know about the business itself? Is it enough for us to just follow the charter and bring our project to completion? Or do we occasionally have to step outside of the role of being a mere project manager and think about what we are doing from a more holistic, from a business point of view? Well, to discuss these and more questions around business acumen, we have Elizabeth Harrin, who is on the line with me from London right now. Hello, Elizabeth.
Hello, Cornelius.
Well, to get us started here in our discussion, let's review the term business acumen itself. What does business mean?
In this situation, I think business refers to the operational context, so the environment in which you work as a project manager. You don't have to work in a company that traditionally sees itself as a business, in inverted commas, either. So you could work for a charity or in a volunteer capacity, but it's still all about the operational context that your work sits inside.
And what about acumen?
I look at that as the ability to be able to make good decisions and to have good professional judgment. I think it's just another way of saying that.
And when we put both of them together, we get business acumen. What does that stand for?
For me, that's common sense in a business environment. So it's applying that common sense or that business judgment and being able to read the financial and operational landscape and apply that to your decision making and the recommendations that you make to your steering group or your project sponsor. So really, it's just big picture thinking with a commercial hat on.
All right, and since our listeners are preparing for their PMP exam, I noticed that the PMBOK guide doesn't really talk much about business acumen, but it mentions business value. Are these terms related?
Yes, I think they are. That's a good spot in the PMP exam, in the PMBOK guide. If you have good business acumen, you're going to get better business value out of your projects. So I know it doesn't talk specifically about acumen, but that is the skill that you need in order to be able to drive the business value and to be able to identify even what that business value is.
All right. Overall, I can see and immediately understand that business acumen would play a major role in the everyday life of a business owner. I've seen that in my own business. Mm-hmm. They need to drive the business forward, and I need to have an understanding of how my business works and my strategic decisions that I make for a business as a whole. But why are we talking about this here? I mean, this is on the project management level. What's the connection really here?
Well, I think the role of a project manager has evolved quite a lot in the last 5 to 10 years. And in our jobs now, we need to do more than just plan out and mark tasks as complete on a Gantt chart. The role of a project manager covers more than that today. And that extra piece is around making sure that the project you are working on is going to deliver something that will be useful to somebody else. And that's the delivering value part. And you can do that more effectively if you have business acumen, because you'll be able to make those connections, to see that leap between how your project is contributing to the business overall. Mm-hmm. So for project managers, for me, it's about being able to understand and apply the knowledge of wider business strategy and operations and funnel that big picture down to what it means for your projects. And I can give you an example. You could schedule your projects so that your interim milestones deliver something of value to the business or to your project sponsor so that they get something, they get some return more quickly, instead of perhaps what might look better with when you're first drafting your project schedule would be to deliver everything in a particular order, and the value would come at the end. So there's something there you can do about scheduling as well. That's just an example of how you could apply understanding what your stakeholders are really interested in through your knowledge of the business strategy and operations, using your technical project management skills to get a great result.
All right. So we're not saying that suddenly completing the project and the deliverables on time on budget, on schedule, on scope, that's still good enough, but there's more to it.
There is more to it. I think that on time, on budget, to the right quality and scope, it's a great starting point, and it is a great thing to aspire to for new project managers. But as you move in your career to manage bigger projects that are more critical to the organisation, then you do need to do more than that. Because if you want to make your project a success, you have to understand the landscape in which you're working. Because your project is not an island. It doesn't exist just alone. So the business acumen that you have helps you make connections with other areas of the business.
And how are business acumen and leadership related?
Leaders typically have good business acumen. I mean, if we go back to the definitions that we talked about at the beginning of this interview, you'd expect them to have good professional judgment, wouldn't you? And to be known for making good decisions and have an awareness of how the business operates. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't have got into a leadership role in the first place. So leaders do have good business acumen. And if you think about what leading actually is, we often define it as setting the vision and using the context of the organisation to bring people along, to do lots of good communications. And I think you can do all of that more effectively if you have a better understanding of the big picture. So with communication, for example, it's around using language that people can understand and relate to. So a leader would talk in terms of business value when they're discussing projects with their senior executives, and then talk about HTML and CSS when they're discussing things with the web designers. So it's, pitching your communications at the right level, and the higher up the organisation you go, the more useful you will find that business acumen skill set.
Is business acumen needed on all projects? I mean, what about when you are leading a small project, maybe of 2 to 3 months duration, or if you have something that is required by a regulatory agency, you have to do this no matter what the business effect?
Well, I think a degree of business acumen helps you on all projects, because it's a lot easier, I think, to do a good job when you understand why you are doing what you are doing, even if you're only contributing to business results in a really, really tiny way. And with your example there of a regulatory project or a compliance project, that can have a massive effect, because if you don't do it, your company's suddenly out of business. So understanding the commercial context of what will happen if this project does not achieve its objectives could be really significant. But I do take the point, though. It's the smaller the project, the less critical the project, the less necessary it is to frame it in sort of the big language of strategy.
There's another term we have to mention and quickly talk about, and that is organizational and operational awareness. How does this play into the overall picture here?
Organizational and operational awareness and business are actually really similar. And I think organizational and operational awareness is, if I had to put it on paper, I would say it's a subset of business acumen. And the reason I'd say it like that is because I believe that business acumen is a transferable skill. So you can take it when you've got it to a different job and apply that approach or that way of behaving to any other project that you happen to be working on. But I think with organizational and operational awareness, it changes from company to company. So you might have to basically draw on your own experience through the company or use a mentor as you join a new company to get more of that awareness of how this particular organization works. Does that make sense? So business acumen is more of a generic skill, and organizational and operational awareness more related to the company that you're in.
Yeah. Let's see if we can actually translate this, everything that we've heard so far, into the everyday life of a project manager.
Okay.
So tell me, if a project manager applies business acumen and also organizational and operational awareness on her or his project, what should they be thinking about? What thought processes do you go through to apply this skill to your project?
I think a lot of business acumen can be gained from working out how your company makes money. And that's something that was not particularly clear to me when I started working in healthcare. And if you work in a non-profit or in sort of a charity environment, you might have to think about how that actually happens. But it's worth understanding how your company stays in business and what it is in business for. That also helps you frame discussions with your stakeholders, because stakeholders are really interested in the main, in my experience, in how much things cost and how long things are going to take. And those things are really, really relevant to projects, aren't they? And so if you can put some of the money stuff in relation to time, then you can really try and translate all of that big picture strategy into tangible differences within your project schedule and your project team and how it operates to get concrete results. So if I can give you an example, think about your business case and the financial benefits that are in that business case. They will be predicated on the basis that your project will deliver at a certain moment in time. So if you can deliver faster, does that mean that your project will generate benefits more quickly? Because generally people want benefits as soon as possible, especially if they're to do with money. So being able to compress your timescales, while that might put cost into the project, it might overall balance out. So, give me an extra resource at $60,000 or however much it costs, and I can deliver 3 months faster, and the cost of finishing 3 months faster will actually equal $500,000 in benefits. So it's a no-brainer discussion when you sit down with your project sponsor to get that extra resource on your project. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, it does. And I'm beginning to see a general picture here, and that really is having a good understanding of not just how your project is embedded in your organization, but also understanding your organization and understanding the environment where your organization is in.
Exactly.
Who are your customers? What is your industry like? What is needed? Understanding how money is made, how things are moved, how people behave. So everything really plays into that business acumen point of view.
Definitely. And I'm glad you mentioned the customer in there, because a lot of what you think of first when you think of business acumen is about the money. It's all commercial. How can we do things faster, more cheaply? But actually, customers is a really important part of, who are your customers in your business and how are you serving them? And what could you do differently? And there is a financial benefit at the end, because if you can get more customers and if you can increase your market share, then you will end up hopefully making more money. But how much does it cost to acquire a customer? So really, should your project be looking at getting 100 new customers or retaining 30 existing customers? So some of the things like that, if you understand the metrics that make up success for your organization, and I'm sure customer satisfaction and customer service, customer retention is probably in there somewhere, then you can start to see, well, this might actually end up, the project might be successful, but the end result might not be as good for the company as if we did X, Y, Z. So let me go away and talk to this person and make sure that we're really going to get the best result. I think the difference really is making sure you get the best result for the company, not necessarily only the best result for the project.
Right. One thing, one example that I remembered when you mentioned customer support is this one right here. If you hurry up on your project and you deliver a somewhat flawed product to the market, then your project is, you're done sooner, you're under budget, and, you're the hero because you delivered it sooner, but your project is just slightly flawed. That will cause a lot of customer support needs, and your technicians are going to have to help the customers more than if you had taken longer, spent more time on this, and delivered a product that was flawless. So there's the whole chain that you have to think about here. And we do talk about the whole benefits realization and the longer view in a different interview with another expert here. So overall, for me, business acumen at this point as a project manager means that I must first understand how all the various moving parts of my organization work together to make it successful, the organization as such, and how it fits into the overall environment, and then how my project fits into this intricately moving clockwork, right?
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. And it's around technology, around commercial aspects, around the communication, publicity, customers, anything that you can think of that your company does may well have. It's the organizational and operational factors that might have a bearing on how your project is put together and how successful it is.
Mm-hmm. What do I do with all this knowledge and understanding? Do I document this somewhere in my project documents?
No, I don't think you do. I mean, you can if you like, if it helps you to make some notes. But I don't think that I've ever seen anybody say, and I will apply my business acumen to better make decisions on this project.
It might be an argument if a decision is being made and, you document this as a supporting information. We made this decision here in such a way because we believe that for the project for the business company as a whole, it's better to go left than it is to go right.
Yes, and I think while you might not actually call out the words business acumen in your business case, it's explicit in there because you might refer to some of that business context in the business case or the project charter. And you'll certainly talk about benefits and you'll probably define the business value of the project. So it is in there, but I wouldn't expect to see the words business acumen. But the example you gave is really good because the same goes for dependencies as well, because by applying your business acumen, it will help you define organizational dependencies that you might face or some of the socio-political constraints within your organization. So would you say that it's part of what PMBOK calls professional judgment when it comes to how you make your decisions?
Can be. I would actually put it under communications even, because they say 90% of what we project managers do is communications. It could very well be that my ability to communicate properly what my project does and how it helps the company to be successful, that is applied business acumen.
Definitely.
To my project, to my environment. What do you think?
I definitely agree. Any kind of stakeholder engagement and change management, if you do any of that in your role, then being able to relate to the people that you're talking to in a way that makes sense to them, so understanding their business context and applying your business acumen to helping them see what your project is all about, that's all stakeholder engagement and communication. And when it comes to communication, it's also, if we take a slightly different view, it's a really useful skill to have if you want to stay in a job, because you can bet that your business acumen will be taken into account during a restructuring if you've got a project manager who consistently ties their project back to business goals, talks about overall objectives, shows how they're delivering business value. And, there's another project manager who has exactly the same project results, equally as successful operationally, but who doesn't use the language of business value, business strategy. Someone higher up the organisation may well perceive the performance of those two project managers to be very different.
I could easily see that. Yeah. Let's make this personal here. Can you give me an example where you applied business acumen on your projects, how you did it and what the result was?
Okay. Well, for me now, I'm mainly doing change management on projects, and the business change projects I'm involved with, they do need a heavy dose of business acumen to ensure the stakeholders know what's coming and why they need to be bothered about it and how they're going to be affected and how they're going to help me. To give you a specific example, one of the projects I worked on recently was an online booking system. I mean, the technology for that is pretty easy. I mean, online bookings is not new, really, is it? But the way it changed the relationship with the customers was pretty major for us. So as a team, we needed to understand the new business landscape, which was, what 21st century customers actually wanted and why that's important and how that's going to affect our commercial position perhaps in 10 years if we don't do it, or in 10 years if we do it. So we're taking a longer term view of adopting technology that's also been around for quite a while. And quite a lot of the commercial context of that was to do with how do we shake up the current status quo to get the commercial results that we want, but managing it in a way that sets it into the context of today's business environment where everybody's got apps on their phones. So a lot of that was talking, mainly it was all communication, I would say. A lot of it was talking to people in language they could relate to. So I didn't talk to the stakeholders or the customers even about building websites and interfaces, but it was all around making people's lives easier and business growth and market share and some of the more detailed things that we mentioned earlier around speed of getting projects done and things like that.
All right. And when you said booking system, we're talking healthcare here, right? So booking a meeting with your physician, would that be?
Yes.
In that sense?
Yes.
Yeah. And because when you said booking system, I remembered the example that my brother gave me. My brother, he also lives in London in the UK, and he works in tourism, and he works for one of the largest tour operators in England. And in the past, he's been with them forever. They had their own travel agencies, physical outlets. And of course, that business has completely changed over the years. You don't see that many travel agencies anymore, physical places where you can go to, because everybody is doing things online. Exactly. So can you imagine the project managers who suddenly saw what they were doing on their projects as they were starting to implement these self-service mechanisms for people, that they could clearly see, if this takes off, all our physical locations, we can close them down.
Yes.
All the effect that this has on people's lives, and understanding what you are doing and how you are doing it. We project managers, we have an enormous impact on how the world changes.
Yes, exactly. And the impact of not having business acumen, you talking about online physical businesses closing down made me think about Blockbuster in the UK, which was a video hire shop. It's quite a famous example of a company that didn't see what was coming around the corner. And now everybody's Amazon Prime and Netflix and streaming data through your TV and stuff. And nobody hires videos anymore. So because of a failure of being able to understand the commercial context, the wider picture of what was happening in the marketplace, changing demands from customers, the end result for lack of business acumen in that senior management team was that they have no company any longer.
Right. Can business acumen skills be learned? And if yes, how?
I think they can. And I think the first major thing to start learning if you want to brush up your skills is to start getting comfortable with numbers, because a lot of business acumen skills is all around understanding the commercial context of your projects. So being able to handle numbers and be confident with that is good. And you can also practice assimilating information, because everything we've talked about is quite big picture, and it takes a certain amount of thinking to be able to say, well, if that's happening over there in the marketing department, in 3 months' time, that's going to be happening over there in the sales department. And then in 3 months after that, my whatever it is that I'm building here needs to be reacting to that environment, and I'm going to have this issue. So it's pulling information from lots of different sources. The more you can start practicing that and tapping into the networks to get that information, the easier it will be. There are actually courses called things like commercial awareness and strategic thinking, and things like that will also help you.
Yeah, and I think what you have just described is not just business acumen, but also organizational and operational awareness.
Yes.
To me, what you have it's just that being there, listening, seeing, hearing, taking things in and getting a feel for what the company does, how does our organization work? How does everything fit together? I mean, that's what we're talking about here.
Yes, and when you start in a new organization, I would strongly recommend that you start to put your own diagrams or own notes together about how it all fits. Because in a small company, it can be quite easy to see. And generally, you might go on a training course and they'll show you the org chart of a company. It'll have 5 boxes on it. But in real life, if you're working for a big multinational organization, it's never going to be that simple, because you'll have functional lines of management, you'll have product lines of business, then you'll have transverse things like HR and IT, but they might be organized by country, so you might also have a country manager, and the interplay between all of those different multinational groups, plus any outsourcing arrangements they might have for whatever tasks they don't manage in-house. It can take you a while to get your head around all these things.
Do you think that some project managers already have business acumen, already have operational and organizational awareness, but are just not aware of it because it's not officially called that?
Yes, definitely. I think many people will be surprised at what they do naturally, and they just aren't aware of it. I mean, shortening the schedule to be faster to market, to reap the benefits sooner, that's business acumen.
Yeah.
But we wouldn't necessarily call it that. We just call it being a good project manager. Getting the best result for your sponsor. A lot of the stakeholder management things we do is also applying your business acumen because it's all about analysing power and influence and reading the cultural environment, the political framework of your company, seeing how your project fits into that. So we do it in various different areas of project management anyway, even though we might not call it that.
Could we say, generally speaking, when it comes to business acumen, for us project managers, it means for us, we need to learn about and participate in the wide variety of issues and activities that are related to the business, to our organization, and its strategic aspects of the projects that we manage.
I think that is a very well-made point. That sums up what we've been talking about perfectly.
All right, then. In that case, here is my final question for you. Can you recommend 3 to 4 steps for actions that our listeners should apply on their projects today, tomorrow, in order to grow their business acumen and make them more successful?
Okay. First, find out how your company makes money. Hiring. And I know that sounds simple, but even in a simple business like a coffee shop, you could be making money as a company in several ways. So you could be selling coffee and other snacks, hiring out your space to a book group, selling art on the walls, making commission from that, selling newspapers. There's going to likely be lots of different channels for revenue, and each of those will have different stakeholders and customers. And that is a great place to start with understanding how your company actually operates and what it's there for. And secondly, find out what your business strategy is. And the easiest way to do that is to read your company's annual report. But I know that not all companies will be required to produce one. So if you don't have one, then maybe talk to your mentor, talk to someone in the management team who can tell you about what the business strategy is and what the longer term goals for the company are. Thirdly, I think you can look at your project and see if you can make any improvements to deliver more business value, maybe through some of the positive risks that you've identified, by doing something easy like seeing what you can deliver faster by changing your work plans. So you can practice business acumen by using your current project as a test case. And finally, I think it's just worth remembering that it's not all about the money. So it's also about being able to read the organisational context and the inter-office politics and to see how to operate within it. So think about how you're going to develop your personal network so that you are more connected to what's going on in your company.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And for those of you who want to know more about Elizabeth and what she does, please stop by at girlsguidetopm.com. Thank you so much for your time today, Elizabeth.
Thank you. It's been really interesting to talk to you today.